Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. I wanted to, first of all, say to my former colleague, Attorney General Bruning, it's great to have you here today. And let me just ask you, based on your testimony, you said the time is ripe for federal and state authorities to work in concert to address this issue and stem the tide of patent trolling nationwide. What do you view the role of state attorneys generals, state authorities on this issue versus the cooperation and with the cooperation with federal authorities on how to address these problems? And, you know, often we always think that Washington's the answer to everything, but the state AGs and state authorities are much closer on the ground level. What role do you think they can play and how we can help consumers on this issue?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. It's very nice to see you as well. I always look forward to seeing you when I'm in Washington. I'm glad to be before the committee today. I would say it's a two-pronged effort. One, the attorneys general, as you recall, we gather, in concert. Tobacco is an example for, that's very well known in 1999, where the attorneys general pursued big tobacco. I would say this is a case where the collective action of the attorneys general is warranted. We can use our consumer protection statutes. These are fraudulent actions. They have no intention of suing. They have no knowledge of any of these individuals actually violating their patents. So I think it violates Nebraska's consumer protection statutes. I think it probably violates most states' consumer protection statutes. For those of us that also have concurrent criminal authority, which is 35 or so attorneys general is my recollection, we have to analyze that because this is fraud. Is it a criminal fraud? And certainly our office is analyzing that. That's a higher bar to get over, but we're analyzing whether or not we should use our criminal statutes as well. And at the federal level, I certainly think the power of the FTC and the national scope of the FTC and the subpoena power of the United States Senate to lift the curtain on these folks. We can't even figure out who's behind MPHJ. Who are these people? Who is this? There's some guy right now at his country club in Austin, Texas or Atlanta, Georgia, and everybody thinks he's a great successful business guy, and what he is a fraudster. And I want to see the United States Senate lift the curtain on it and say, here you are. And I want to see Steve Kroft at 60 Minutes standing on the guy's driveway with a microphone saying, why is it you held hostage these voices for, this choir in Omaha that got this letter, or this 80-year-old man with Alzheimer's in Holdrege, Nebraska that got this letter. I want to see those national news people standing on the driveway of this guy that everybody thinks is a preeminent businessman. I want to see him exposed, and you can do that with your subpoena powers. Right. And I think a small tweak in the statutes or in the rules at the FTC to require registration of these letters, I think there seems to be some agreement that may be useful. Senator, I think you've said it extremely well. I mean, as we listen to Mr. Mossoff, perhaps registration is one way to lift the veil. We just need to have openness in this process. Legitimate patent holders, none of us have any problem with them enforcing their rights using the court system, but this isn't about patents. This is about fraud. This is about extortion. This is about fear with little companies that Mr. Potter represents, little app developers that it's their life or death. Some guy that's invested his last $100,000, this letter will take him down.
Right.
And so I think that's how I know I went far afield there, Senator, but I think there is a role for each of us to play.
Great. I appreciate it. Thank you. And this is something that I'm concerned about. We're blessed in this country to have incredibly great innovators. Many of them start out of their garages, right? So in New Hampshire, we have a great one, Dean Kamen. And so when I was preparing for this hearing, we reached out to him, and he rightly raises the issue that I want to hear from you on, which is, and I think perhaps, Mr. Chandler, you can help me with this. You think about Cisco's revenue, so much of it comes from small businesses. And how do we make sure that we aren't harming, by trying to address the patent trolls, aren't harming or decreasing the value of legitimate small innovators? These people that start out of their garage and have such great ideas, and that's what America's all about. So when we address this problem, we've got to get that right to make sure that we are not hurting these wonderfully brilliant individuals that just have a great idea in America. So can you comment on that, Mark? And also, excuse me, Mr. Chandler, and can you also comment on it, Mr. Mossoff?
I think that's a very, very important concern, and I've testified on a panel together on patent reform with Dean, and have a huge amount of respect for his contributions And I know that when he has concerns about infringement, he doesn't send letters to individual Segway users asking them to send $10 each and don't look too closely at the patent. So he knows exactly how to enforce his patents in an effective way. And there are issues related to how the patent litigation system works and what's fair in it and not. And I think those are being appropriately dealt with at the Judiciary Committee. I think what we're looking at today is something that is not something that flows into the way Dean Kamen goes about conducting his business and enforcing his patents, and that is making sure people who are targeting end users who buy a product that incorporates someone else's technology aren't victimized when there's a huge cost and information asymmetry, but that the information is out there and there's some transparency so they know who to go to in order to get help and solve their problems. And that's something that I would be arm in arm with Dean Kamen in supporting, and I'd be surprised if he would want a business model where he was out sending thousands of letters to people using counterfeit Segways.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
Thank you, Senator. I think you raise a very, very important point. In fact, at a conference this past September here in D.C., Dean Kamen spoke, and he spoke out actually on the issue of patent trolls, and he actually said the phrase applies to me. In fact, he said, "I am, trolls are us." And he was very proud of that. He said, because I needed investors when I came up with my inventions, when I was still working in my parents' basement, when I created my first inventions. And he said, so I embraced that division of labor where I was the inventor and there were business persons and other experts and lawyers who could commercialize and enforce my patents for me. And that's why he refers to himself as a troll. And it shows you the difficulties and problems with the labels that we're using and the rhetoric that we're using, because it covers lots of different actors in a very, very complex and heterogeneous innovation economy. And as you mentioned, small businesses and individual inventors, they need very strong patent rights. And it's individual inventors and small businesses who are oftentimes are not manufacturing yet, who in negotiating with large companies are essentially told, sue us. If you think we're infringing, then sue us. In fact, one transactional attorney who testified at the FTC DOJ workshop last December actually stated that he hears that a lot from his clients and in deals that he negotiates, that small businesses and individuals are told when attempting to negotiate licenses with large companies are told, sue us. And then those small companies and businesses are immediately painted as patent trolls that are attacking these large companies who are innovators. And so this is a real concern because the small businesses and inventors actually do need very strong patent rights, and patent rights that aren't necessarily weakened by additional burdens that will be imposed upon them, both in trying to license their inventions as well as in trying to enforce them, which is always the backstop that makes the licensing possible. And in this respect, to go back to Attorney General Brewing's comments and Senator McCaskill's, your comments about a registry, I think we also need to be aware of that there are existing legal tools and implementation of regimes that actually address the issues of disclosure. The Patent Office is about to issue rules for notice and comment on actually transparency of ownership, following President Obama's executive orders last June 4th. And so we have to always hold in context that the discussion that we're holding here is part of a very large and vast discussion about revising the patent system. And this is something that I really hope that we hold in context, is that another massive revision of the patent system just 2 years after the America Invents Act, which was also a massive revision of the patent system, creates a lot of uncertainty. And that's an uncertainty that affects and makes it much more costly, not just for large companies to implement innovation into the marketplace, but also small businesses and individuals to whom they're much more sensitive to costs, as Mr. Sinowitz has been reminding us about.
Thank you, Mr. Mossoff.